Hello and welcome back to the smoke room, Nik's route. So, first off, I feel that I should mention that the only reason that I'm technically reading it right now, or I guess recording it for the channel, is because I had a poll for the channel members, and I asked them, considering what's going on or what happened with the writer for the smoke room and how the smoke room is no longer canon, if they wanted me to continue it, and most of them said yes. So that is why I'm reading it. But yeah, so like I said, basically the smoke room is no longer canon and it no longer belongs to the Echo Project. So yeah, you may or may not have heard what happened, and I don't really want to go into a lot of detail about it, but a lot of bad stuff happened, and it included some other visual novels and, well, visual novel, I guess, one of them that I'm thinking of that I like. But yeah, so that would explain why I'm reading it, I guess. This is the endings for Nikolai's route, and I say endings because I'm going to be doing the bad route first, which is more what happens when Will dies, and then afterwards I will be doing the good route, which is what happens when Will survives. So yeah. Why am I doing both? Because I want to know what happens. I'm wondering if you guys would want to know what happens too. Anywho, so yeah. Like I said, Will dies. He was just shot by somebody. We don't know who that is yet. Will we find out? Who knows? And like I said, this is the bad quote-unquote route. And yeah, that really, there isn't any more to say, but yeah, so like I said, some of you will probably know why this visual novel is no longer part of the Echo Project. It is now being, I guess, manned by George and his group called the Goodnight Fellowship now. And this particular build, or no, not this build, this particular portion of the story was still when it was part of the Echo Project. And the good portion is after George, I guess, takes control of it, okay? So, just so you know. Anywho, so without further ado, let us continue the smoke room Nikolai's route. Well, Nikolai's bad route. I feel Nik's big paw grab onto my shoulder, shaking me. We have to go! I stare at Will just lying on the ground. The pool of blood around him stains the sand. I want to say, we can't leave him. I want to say, but he's still right there. But I stumble backward. The walls of the quarry feel taller and tighter. That all I can do for the rest of my life is run until I can't run anymore. The sounds of gunshots go off to my left. A row of people climbing out of the side of the quarry tumbles to the ground, some silent, some twitching while they bleed. The guard surrounds the ground of the quarry from every side. I hear the gunshots again and pellets whiz through the air to the side of me and from behind me. Somebody trying to run gets their head popped like a balloon full of red jelly. That old fear in me is back. The fear that I'm doomed. That the rest of my life is just me running. Running until I run out of energy. Wake up, Sam! We have to go into the mine! I shake my head. Fuck that goddamn pit. It's the only way that we are getting out. I hear the wind from the tunnel. Like it's opening its jaws for me. One last time. I want to tell Nik that if we go into the cave, we're not coming back out. But there's nowhere left to go. Shots fire again. This time from behind me too. Another wave of men in front of me fall. Why, God? Why is there nowhere left to go? As much as I want to see, I don't check to see if any of the guards in front of me fall. I have to run as fast as I can, past the first turn of the rocks where the bullets can't hit me. We see a wall of crates stacked up where we hadn't seen them before. I recognize the snout of gun barrels poking from the holes. Oh God, we're already dead. Those are our side, Sam. I don't particularly think anybody is on our side right now. They don't shoot, but I don't want to give them a chance to change their minds. We turn another corner of rocks before we hear another round of shooting. Then the angry buzz of voices drowns out everything else. In front of us, there's a crowd of men shouting, flailing, bottlenecked at the entrance to the thin shaft leading into the bigger room. As we close the gap of the people in front of us, more bodies slam into us from behind, pushing us forward, shouting for us to go in. They're not moving fast enough, Nik. The gunmen at the front will buy us enough time. And then what? Then we find Yao. You'll have a plan. You sound so fucking sure about that. Because I am sure of it, Sam. Will was sure about everything too now, wasn't he? Nik doesn't respond. I said, wasn't he? Something barrels into me and it's hard to breathe. Everything goes sideways for a moment. Then I see black. But just for a moment. Nik is pushing the crowd of men off of me, throwing punches as they elbow him, trying to push their way forward. So is this where we die? No. The crowd is moving forward. We're free of the tight passage finally and we break into the open domed room. Apart from the fleeing protesters, the mines are completely empty today. There is nobody pushing carts or huddling around the elevator. They must have been told to go home. As if they knew something was going to happen. Men run past us, shouting in various languages, stumbling over each other. There's an overflow of bodies crawling over one another like ants pouring out of a hole. One of them falls in front of the crowd, screaming until his voice suddenly goes silent. Most everybody has such a wild look in their eyes, but they only seem to be looking forward, running as far away from the sounds of the shots as possible. But out of the corner of my eye, I see a lizard's tail slip left, then disappear into the foreman's post before the door slips shut. I pull Nik's wrist toward the direction. Why there? Beckett's in there. Nik's brow furrows, his eyes narrow, and he nods. We climb up the wooden scaffold to the door. There is a shadow there behind the scuffed door. I can't see him entirely, but I know that he's looking straight at us through the tinted glass. I open the mail slot with my claws and slip down to my knees. Help us, please. I hear a ruckus coming from inside the room. The drawers are opening, boxes are shuffled. They're killing everybody. I try to look through the slat to get a better look to see what he's doing, and I'm met with a cold metal to my forehead. You don't back away from this door? You're joining him. He pauses for a moment. Shit. You're the two who were hovering around that damn tiger. Nik raises his voice to a yell. Why are you talking about the tiger? Well, he's part of the reason the guard is here, ain't he? He was stashing dangerous weapons in the mine. The both of us tense up. You caught them doing this? Not me specifically, but the leadership was notified. Pretty recently, in fact. Everybody knows about it now. But how could they have known? He was so careful. That has to be a mistake. No mistake. Ben was able to show us the evidence after being confronted. Nik's ears splay back. Confronted? An anonymous tip tried to accuse him of something similar. He had a good nose for rooting out the truth of things. Though he's missing now. Probably dead, God rest his soul. Even after he's gone, that man's causing us grief. God ain't got nothing to do with him, I reckon. He nudges me with a gun. Whatever his crime, it weren't stashing weapons. Can't say the same about your friend. I've got to ask him more. There's a chance that he might tell us more. Or at least let us hide. I have to say something. Anything. Please. If we can just hide, you think that they won't look here? He turns his head and sees Nik. Oh, hell no. They're especially looking for him. We hear the gun load. I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I ain't gonna hurt you either, unless you make me. 'Cause if I do, it'll be your own damn fault. You have to the count of 10 or I'll shoot. It's not our fault. 1. Nik ain't have anything to do with whatever started the gunfire. 2. Please. 3. Nikolai picks me up. He grunts, lifting me up with his arms while I struggle, squirming my way out of his grasp. I don't hear Beckett's voice anymore. We're off of the scaffold and Nikolai is breathing heavily. I twist my arms out of the lock that he has me on and try to go back to the cabin. But he grabs me again. Let me just try and reason with him one more time. You did try. There is no more time. Bitterly, I turn away from the shack, walking in stride with Nik as he takes me deeper into the twists and turns of the dark tunnels. I want to argue, but the gunshots get louder. I think that I hear them tearing the boxes stationed near the front to shreds, as wet groans cry into the air. We don't talk for a while after that. Nikolai picks up his pace, and so do I to keep up with his stride. The longer we walk, the closer the gunshots sound. They won't fire this far inside the cave, would they? Nik doesn't look at me. He's walking at a pace where he's panting for breath now. I don't know. They could cause a cave-in. They do not care, Sam. But that would trap them too, wouldn't it? Something tells me Briggs wouldn't care if that happened to them either. Who's there? We stop in our tracks. A man's voice calls out. Identify yourself, now. I'm trying to figure out where the voice is coming from. Behind us, there's just a long curve of a tunnel. In front of us, there's a junction of the tunnel going 4 ways. I open my mouth to answer that we're just lost, but Nikolai holds his paw over my mouth. He points his claw at the silhouette of a gun tip, dangling it in front of the passageway, obscuring the rest of its owner. I know which direction you spoke from. My heart starts banging in my chest. They caught us. We're caught. You should come out. There's 4 of us here. I look at Nik, asking with my expression if we should answer, but he shakes his head. Shooting me won't save you. Drop your weapons and face us. We don't move. We don't breathe. We don't say a goddamn thing. That's the only course of action to take if you wish to leave these mines alive, civilian. I don't believe them. Nik doesn't believe them either. It sounds like there's only one of you. Nikolai crouches and places his paw on a rock. I've never seen him sit so still. Sounds like you want to make a wager. I'll take it. Several officers turn into the tunnel. Then I hear a series of shots. We guessed wrong. I begin to wonder when I feel the bullets tear holes through my body. Whether it will hurt or sting, or catch me in the spot where I feel nothing at all. But the pain doesn't come. I still hear Nikolai breathing. 2 bodies are lying on the floor. Just 2. The sharp smell of iron and smoke mix with the rancid smell of guts, making my eyes water. They were bluffing. I know that voice. Nikolai starts laughing. Then so do I. Hearing Paul's voice tends to mean that some sort of fight is about to break out. For the first time, I'm grateful for somebody who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. William is dead. You're still trapped in the mines. I can't think about that now. If I think about it, I'll give up. Giving up means death. I have to keep going. You all right? As much as we can be, but... Yeah. Nik is panting harder now, his breath sounding more like grunts with each passing breath. We need to go. I don't know if Yao will wait for us if we're not at the rendezvous soon. I hear Felipe's voice too. Finding them makes me feel safer. The more of us who find one another, the better our chances. I tell myself this has to be the truth.
'cause a gun runs out of bullets when there are too many bodies.
Yao wouldn't abandon us after all this. Let's move. I try to ignore the voice I just heard. The voice has stopped. But this one doesn't sound as much like me. How this sounded was hard to describe. Like the sound that you'd think a pumpkin would make after it rotted in the sun. A withered, sickly sound. I tell myself that I know everything down here is dangerous. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it can kill you. So I decide to ignore it. Just for now. We walk along passageway after passageway, feeling the walls. I loosen up with a stretch and a silent sigh now that the sounds of the guns are a distant way away now. Nobody speaks as we keep a steady gait between stretches of darkness broken occasionally by the beams of light breaking through the ceiling. Not until Nik breaks the silence. Have you seen any others? I can barely make out Paul and Felipe exchange glances silently, then the Wolverine clears his throat. More than a few. Speaking optimistically, I think they only took about a third of us with the guns. Nik doesn't answer right away. His voice is gruff when he does. That is hundreds of people. Our boots crunch into the sand as we march forward. Which means that we'll have a national case on our hands if hundreds more get out and take it to the court. His voice raises and his temper creeps in. They can't do this to this many people. They want a clean nose. Especially when it comes to the lives and death of red-blooded Colombians. I can make out Nik and Felipe tense when he says that. Believe me when I say that we're on the right side of history here. I decide to speak up. My words sputter out. Especially if there's somebody like Dimitri to speak up about it. I'm aware that they sound too high. Too desperate. He can certainly motivate a crowd. Paul and Felipe don't respond. The sound of our boots crunching fills the silence again. Did he make it? When Nik is blunt, he's hard to ignore. He said his leg wound would slow us down. So he volunteered to fire at the door. We haven't seen him yet. I like that Paul says yet because he's not saying what we all dread. He speaks like we're going to see him again. But the despair washes up into me just as fresh. I want to ask, why didn't you stop him? Or why didn't you carry him with you?
He would make for an excellent shield.
But he answers before I can ask. He punched me so hard in the face that I bled. At this point, I can't tell if I'm crying or not. Lately, I've cried so much that I can't help but be numb to it. I'm grateful that I ain't feeling anything yet. Because if I felt anything at all, it would be too much. And then I would have to stop. And none of us can afford to stop. Nik and I know that there is something wrong with these minds. But as terrified as I am with whatever awaits for me down here, the thing that took my trust, took my joy, that put me on this path of misery and hate, it seems to work within a set of rules and habits that I don't quite understand. With certainty, I can understand the finality of a gunshot now. So if there's something worse that waits for me after death, the worst thing that can happen to me now is getting shot. But the ease of my mind that comes with seeing familiar faces after something horrible is starting to slip away. We're all still in danger. I speak up again. Did Yao tell you to go this way in person? The Wolverine blinks, as if I had just asked him if he personally knew Babe the Blue Ox. I'm not gonna be cute with any answers, but yes. You're sure? In person? The group all look at me now the way that Paul did the first time. They seem irritated with the repetition of my question. Nik adds weight to my question. He told you where the rendezvous would be then. Paul clears his throat. To answer your question, using his communication network, he passed me a letter with his seal. The only way the message could be compromised is if he were compromised himself. He showed us where he had his weapons before, in that place below, which led to the Hendricks Manor. That doesn't mean that it was the only location, or even a permanent one. I understand that he made backups with his plans, If you want to think that way, then you're just admitting that you think that we're much worse off than we're telling you. There is a low growl in his voice now. I like to think that's quitter talk. And quitting in these circumstances just means laying your head down to die, don't it? The uneasy feeling in my body just keeps building. But why this way? These weren't the exits that we had taken before. You're still not convinced? I just think that I recognize where we're going is all. Nik wrote on his map that there were vapors close by. Yao had many secrets. It would not be out of character to put down misleading information if his plans were to fall in the wrong hands. I dropped the subject. There's no point in talking about it if we're all just going to go this way anyway. As we passed through another beam of light, I noticed something that I hadn't before. There are specks of blood on Nik's shirt. He's been coughing. Coughing hard. I lean in to whisper into his ear. You're bleeding? He hushes me, looking forward. Paul and Felipe haven't noticed yet. They do not need to know. But it's all over your chest. We can see it's somebody else's blood. I am just overexerting myself a bit. That doesn't look like a bit. Hey. He takes a very sharp and serious tone with me. No fretting. Worry about cave monsters and bullets. Not what I cough up on a napkin. Your shirt in a napkin. I am fine, Samuel. He seems to believe so, but I don't think that he's right. We had people at the hip cough blood from time to time, and Dora always took it seriously. The longer we walk, the more voices we hear ahead. The only thing that keeps me from panicking is that I hear more than just Albion being spoken. We come out onto a domed cavern with better natural lighting. Paul was right. There are more miners here than I thought that there would be, hundreds who have escaped the guard. All gathered in this place. Rays of light pierce through the rocks in the sky far above. Craggy sandstone, stacked in wedges, makes them look possible to climb. The idea of an exit existing here somewhere begins to feel more likely. But if it's here, I still can't identify it. And I don't see Yao either. But what everyone does see is a tall crate in the middle of the room with a white sheet over it. Nik tilts his head a bit. Are those supposed to be the weapons? This is where he said that they would be. We followed the marks on the wall. But, big crate? Just sitting out here in the open? Nik shakes his head. No. This feels too conspicuous for Yao. Paul frowns. Either he doesn't agree or he doesn't want to admit that he thinks something isn't right. People crowd around the box. Some mention that they have waited long enough. Some ask for the appearance of Feng Yao Lin. But it's Felipe who kneels by the crate and knocks on it. He turns his head and gives the Wolverine a skeptical look. Yao's not here, man. I ain't blind, Felipe. He didn't think to leave us tools. It's nailed shut. Voices talk over one another as the people in the room shuffle about touching the crate, trying to push it on it to tip it over or look under the sheet. It takes a while for Paul to get everybody to quiet down. When none of the Albion speakers manage to bring forward a pick, he asks Felipe to ask the Sonoran speakers if they have one on hand. Eventually, somebody manages to supply one and they start picking at the outside walls of the crate. After cracking the wood open, the buzz of the crowd only grows angrier. From the angle that I can see, it doesn't look like there are any guns or ammunition inside. More people shout to take all the wood off. Paul shoves his torso inside instead. Looking around, he lets out a shout from within. He comes out, eyes red from irritation, holding what looks like something limp and rubbery. The hell's that, man? These are Yao's mining gloves. He puts his hand inside and then pulls out a letter. I see Huxian characters stamped into the red wax of the seal before the Wolverine breaks it. Paul pulls out the letter inside, unfolding it as people let out sounds of surprise or confusion. Most of them probably can't even read the letter considering it's in Albion. Me and Nik look over his shoulder to see what it says. The weapons are not coming. The plan has been compromised. You all have to get out. The only way now is the deepest passage. Follow the red lines to the something of the second passage. I have fixed the elevator so it can go to the lowest level now. Oh, fuck this. We hear the hair curse behind our necks. We all turn to Felipe, who has thrown up his arms. No weapons? The Wolverine stares at the paper some more, as if that will change what the writing says. Afraid not. The hair lets out a string of Sonoran that I can't understand. It makes some of these Sonorans cover their mouths or let out calls of despair. He pushed us this far and doesn't even give us anything to protect ourselves with? Paul shakes his head. We don't know what happened. I doubt that he wanted things to be like this. Something must have happened. The hair is tugging his ears so hard that it looks like he's about to pull them out. It doesn't matter. I don't care. There's no excuse for putting us in this position. Shit happens, Felipe. Shit is right. He just expected us to push through the mines and walk into the desert? Just walk on and out there, out in the open? No food? No water? No idea or direction for what's next? He lets out another string of Sonoran, harsher, quieter, more like hissing. No way. I'm out. Paul just stares and blinks. The fuck you mean you're out? The hair shakes his head. I said what I said. The hair starts pushing his way through the crowd. Paul grabs him by hooking around an elbow. You think you can just put your hands up and they won't shoot you and they'll let you go back to mining? I don't know, man. Maybe? You think that it was worth it, losing all of your friends, all of our jobs? Our lives? How was any of this worth it? I worry that if Paul pulls any tighter on the hair's arm, that he'll tear it off the socket. How is the guard's overreaction our fault? Do you really think that things could have gone better if we hadn't done anything at all? I don't really know. Felipe yanks his arm away from the Wolverine and pushes him away. Kinda hard to imagine anything worse than this. It was pretty damn easy to imagine considering they've done it before. They're monsters, Felipe. They were never gonna stop. They don't know how to stop. We had to show them the consequences. The hair holds up both of his paws in front of the Wolverine to cut him off from speaking. Look, I know you don't have a family, but I do. They will die without me, and I am not going to let that happen. So fuck your ideals. And fuck your imaginary weapons. My family relies on tangible things. So like I said before, I'm out. The hair pushes past the Wolverine and starts lopping down the tunnel. You're a coward, you hear me? A damn fool if you do this! Just let them go, Paul. The Wolverine ignores Nik and follows the direction that Felipe ran off in. Paul shouts again, cursing him, damning him, saying that he'll skin him if he ever sees him again. Confusion breaks out again once the hair disappears completely into the dark. Again, people call out Yao's name and for the weapons. Nik. What's Sam? He sounds agitated. I don't know if it's because of what Yao really left in the crate or what just happened with Felipe. Sorry. Nothing to be sorry for. We can only control what we choose to do. Others will do what they want. And right now, I'm looking for that red paint. Even if it's all that he gave us, that is still something. He told us not to come. Nik smiles. And we did anyway. You're only proving my point, Samuel. But why would he leave his gloves? I think about the pit at the bottom of the mines. Perhaps he wanted to hide the letter? Somebody would find it. I look at the pair of gloves dropped on the floor, bending down to pick them up. Maybe he left some other message within them. There's nothing scratched onto the outside of them. I feel around them. Nothing inside. They're just leather gloves, as thick as they are ordinary. But I recognize the smell. These are definitely his. I try to bring up how useless they are before a loud noise makes me shut my mouth. We hear gunshots down the tunnel. Gunshots that are extremely close. Everybody goes quiet. I don't want to think if those shots were for Felipe or not. Somebody shoves a crate, making it rock. For a moment, I see that there's darkness beneath the corner. Nik sees it too. We hold the ends and shove it together. It budges, but we can't muster the strength to tip it over alone. Give us a hand. Paul doesn't wait to ask as he puts his body weight onto the box too. His eyes are angry and bleary, and probably because of what likely just happened down the tunnel. But he puts everything that he has into the push. It topples over, and beneath it we see a shallow drop. There is dark red paint splattered on the floor. The Wolverine gestures with his arms and shouts, pointing his arms. Down! Quick! Nik and I and several other miners drop down. As we descend, we can see that there is a series of additional drops that leap into the lower level of the next floor if we slide through the gaps and keep dropping. Dozens of people follow us through, spilling through the cracks. I see one man twist his leg, but he covers his mouth to smother the noise of pain. Another man slips, hitting his forehead, going unconscious. Some people try to carry him, but others argue about it. We don't stop to see whether they bring him or not. It doesn't take long to get to the widest room of the mine, with a long, vertical shaft. Like Yao promised, the cage platform is there, which wasn't there before. I recognize it as the disassembled piece which was left at the bottom of the mine on the way to the Hendricks Manor. Nik tells us the elevator looks sturdy enough to fit about 10 people at a time. Paul volunteers to operate the winch above. The way it whines and squeals sends chills through my bones as I watch the first group of 10 go down. It's not any easier when it's my turn to descend. I wonder for a moment if it's noisy enough to get us caught. If there are guardsmen watching us, they ain't speaking, and they definitely ain't shooting. Nik operates the winch from the bottom, and I feel a little better once the three of us are down there together with the rest of the men. But the long rope bridge, swaying from one side of the chasm to the other, is waiting for us, and the acid in my stomach wells up in my throat. The voice has long left me, but I remember how it goaded me across that bridge, wanting me to go down, wanting me to go deeper. But across from me, I can also see the false rocks. I remember that Yao had stored a gun. I test the rock to see if it's still there. And it is. A reminder of her promise despite everything somewhat fulfilled. I whisper, Nik. He turns to me, feeling the gun at his side. I try to slip it to him to make him hide it. But he shakes his head, then slips it in my pocket. You will need it more than me. He bares his fangs and shows me fisticuffs, lightening my heart, making me forget for just one moment where we are again and what's happened to us. Paul. What now, Ayers? The Wolverine still sounds emotional. Whether it's because of what Felipe did, or what likely happened to him, we can't say. When we get to the bottom of the mines, there is a path that we have to follow. Tell as many people as you can that they have to follow the markings on the ground and go nowhere else. Sure thing, sweetheart. Nik gives me a wary look. We've been this way before, Paul. You have to do this. Yao was the one who told us to do this in the first place. He nods slowly. It's not an understanding nod. So how come it wasn't in the letter then? That's a fair question. How come it wasn't on the letter? Nik and I weren't guaranteed to be here to tell anybody. That omission feels reckless for a fellow like Yao. A fellow who'd factor in every detail. Maybe he was rushed. Either way, we can't tell if Paul's choosing to listen to us or not. But I can only hope that everyone who would choose to listen heard us. Let's go, folks. Let's go. The ropes beneath us squeak and whine as we're shepherded across the bridge. Considering the circumstances, I'm impressed that too many people aren't crossing over at the same time. But considering we can't even see the bottom of where we'd fall, it might be because everyone knows that they don't really want to cross this bridge, even though they know that they have to. In some ways, it's a miracle that we managed to get this many people across this old bridge without it failing. It's so damn dependable for a bridge this old, especially for something made of rope. But for some reason, this also feels wrong to me, because it shouldn't be for something so ordinary. But it is. It's as if this bridge isn't meant to fail. Every person is meant to make it. And every person does make it to the descent of stone steps on the other side. They're just as old and out of place as I remember them, that same feeling that the elevator gave me. Our long walk down begins, and I don't know how long we walk. We go deeper. It gets darker. Hearing the shambling of so many footsteps stops making me feel so comfortable now. There are many of us, but we couldn't see any other faces. As we go deeper, I don't hear many footsteps, and it frightens me. I try to stare into the dark to try and see if anything else has happened, as if to make out whether or not there are fewer of us. I can still see many men walking, even if their faces are hard to make out. But some of them are crawling on their hands. You see them doing it too. I don't answer for a while. Then I whisper, "Yeah." I wait a while before I speak up again.
Don't let them hear you.
The fur on the back of my neck sticks up after I hear that voice, the voice that couldn't possibly belong to a person. Why are they crawling? Must be tired. It is like your feet know when they shouldn't be walking, but your hands know that there is always more work to be done. Busy hands are living hands. I nod, even though he's talking kind of funny. Please don't start crawling, Nik. I would not if you asked me to. I reach out to hold his hand in the dark, but whether the dark is at fault or the level of the steps is impossible to find. At last, we reach the bottom of the steps. I don't feel better being here, but it's much easier to see. And I don't hear any guns down here. Just a buzzing sound. A sound like the earth is talking from one of the oldest pits of time. A time before time even began for people. It's impossible to ignore the massive pile of stacked gloves beside me. Without saying anything, Paul takes Yao's gloves and tosses them onto the pile. Nobody feels the need to ask him why. So I do. Why did you do that? There is an inexplicable dread inside of me again. Dunno. I wasn't really thinking about it. But still, you did it. He looks at me like I'm crazy. But I'm not the person who has a hard time explaining why I do things whenever somebody asks. It's crazy that he doesn't know why. It's not like he's gonna need them anymore, is he? I'll buy him new ones. That is, if I ever see the son of a bitch again. I notice that the pile gets bigger as more workers get to the bottom. And Paul didn't just put Yao's into the pile. His are gone too. I don't know why, or what it means, but I don't think that it's a good idea. I keep mine on, in case that I'll need to climb up anything sharp. The pile has already been there after all. It feels like grim to me, like agreeing to have your bones thrown into a tomb or an ossuary, mixed in and inseparable from all the others, where not even your bones can point out much about who you were anymore. I don't want to look to see if Nik has put his gloves on the pile too. Some people make casual talk about the walk being hell and that they don't want to carry any more unnecessary weight. But I can't pay much more attention to them. I need to find the path that will lead me and Nikolai out of here. But then I stop. Nothing in this tunnel glows like the way that it did the first time. What was bright and lustrous looks wet, like glistening mud or fouled water that shines in uneven flecks when disturbed. I can't see a path anymore. There is no distinct pattern to light the way. Just faintly glowing lights that mix together and the crossroads into what look like arched doorways. This is the bottom of the mine, ain't it? Must be. Well, what the hell? Never thought that I'd see it, with all the warnings and the stories. He sounds almost proud to be here. This was supposed to be an underdeveloped cave, but that ain't true at all. What do you think of it? I pity him. I think that I never want to see it again, Paul. This or any level. Paul spits on the ground, just leaving a piece of me behind. Some people mill about looking at the lights. Some people chat a little easier, but they shouldn't, because there isn't time for this. We have to get out. Whatever sense of urgency we had is gone. Some people choose a spot to rest. We have to get out. I must have said that out loud because of the pat on my back that somebody gives me. But all the voices stop when we hear the explosion. It doesn't sound like a cave-in or dynamite sticks going off. It sounds like 100 dynamite sticks tied together and then launched into the sun. There is a terrible quaking around us all. Some people think it's an earthquake. Some people think it's an airstrike. What just happened? It sounded like an explosion above. That's what I thought it was too. A cougar spooked by the explosion is shouting. Even in his own language, I could pick out what he was shouting about. The dark, the lack of weapons. Stop screaming. His patience has run out. I said, stop fucking screaming and stay calm. Paul's patience has run out too. All we have to do is keep going straight until we run into the right way. The man keeps yelling. So does Paul. It couldn't be clearer that neither could understand one another, but Paul keeps talking, waving his arms. It's obvious that this was carved out to be a path. The Wolverine holds out his arm, gesturing forward. Some of the men start following him while others argue with one another, perhaps in which direction to go. Paul decides to go straight, still shouting at the man. But Nik looks like he realizes something. Wait. The Wolverine's shouts drown out the badgers. Nik raises his voice, trying to get Paul and the cougar's attention still. Wait! But it's too late. A sudden pillar of flame rushes past the cougar, burning his body. He screams and we can all smell his fat boil in the heat. When he turns, his eyes have melted out of his sockets. Sloshes of flesh fall from his body as he crumbles into a heap of wet flesh. It happens so fast that we can't even help. Paul bends over, eyes wild, laughing, crying, then throwing up. Whatever sense of confidence he was trying to broadcast is long gone. For a moment, it looks like he can't pretend anymore that we're going to be saved. Nobody deserves what had just happened to the other puma. Nobody deserved to see it either. The entire cavern fills with warm, bright light, making the crystals around us shine hotly. Smoke starts to fill the room slowly now. Nik, the gases! Paul! The Wolverine isn't responding. Nik goes over to grab him, but he doesn't budge. He stubbornly refuses to move. It's as if he doesn't seem aware of who he is or where he is anymore. I try to shake Nik, who in turn shakes Paul. The smokes from the fire cover him in fog, making him cough and hack. Nik starts to cough too. Damn it, Paul! Don't you leave me too! He takes the man's arm. I realize that if I don't help him, the smoke is going to catch up with Nik. So we drag Paul out of the smoke together. The Wolverine is still laughing. He's sobbing and drooling over himself in between coughs. We hear people in front of us cry out as the heat waves of another combustion surge past us. Some people's clothes are alight. Some fur is singed. The temperature of the room as a whole rises. People start to scream as more rocks catch a flame. The smoke level is past some people's heads, and I'm surrounded by coughing. Choking. People crawl over one another trying to climb rocks, or one another. But some people start to stick together as they burn. Nik takes my hand and charges me through the cave. Some people see us and cry out, following us, yelling words that we don't understand. Nik, you're following the flames. Yes. We'll die. No, we die if we stay. Somehow we come to a staircase on the other side of the room. But there are iron gates behind it. And it's closed. Nikolai stops in his tracks. I wonder if he feels defeated again, if only for a moment. But I realize that he's hesitating. The men who follow us run ahead of him, going for the gate. Do not! But again, he's ignored. People scream as their paws fry around the gate of the opening, sticking to the hot metal. Their hands wind together, fusing to the iron, flesh melting off of the digits of their paws, all grasping at one another, hunting for some latch or some lever that will lift the hot bars and let them climb. And then a terrible feeling comes over me. A feeling that I've been here before. Worse than ever before. The first wave of fire had come from somewhere. And then something worse happens. A new vortex of flame from the mouth of the staircase swirls out, igniting the people stuck to the metal. By the time it passes them by, their flesh is so disfigured that their faces and bodies have grafted together into a terrible mass of eyes and gaping mouths. Whatever the nature of this chamber was, it feels as if it's shifting. Blue shadows give way to scarlet miasmas. Flames color the stone ceiling a deep, vast red, almost as if it were the sky itself on fire. If what was here was sleeping, it now feels fully awake, and it sips into screams and sucks up the melting organs. It's the worst thing that I've ever seen in my life. Don't look! Nik takes me by the arms and pulls me around his neck. Somehow we're climbing now. The fire hasn't gotten to him. He's still whole. Still mine. Hey, Nik? He doesn't answer. Did you know that you were the best friend that somebody like me could have had? Stop speaking. But I want to say what I need before the smoke catches up. We can talk after we get you out of here. But I'm not getting out of here, am I, Nik? He ignores me as he reaches his hands up, clawing away the rocks with his sharp claws. I can see now where we are. We're several feet above the iron gate. There is a weak point in the stone wall. Nik is holding onto it with a pick that he used to open Yao's crate. I wasted too much time chasing a dream, Nik. We can see some loose stone. I wanted respect. He beats away the loose stone with his paws and it falls loose from the damp earth, revealing iron bars that block another way into the stairs. I wanted money. The smoke has already risen thick at our feet. The last that we hear of Paul is below us at the gate. He's trying to help open it with the others who have been disfigured, but the smoke gets so thick that we can't see them anymore. If we break through, that we can open it from the other side. I don't know if he's listening anymore, but I still need him to hear this. I need him to hear this before the end of him and me and every trace that we have of one another. I wanted to live the end of my life out in the light and glamour. I wasted it when I could have spent my time with you. And he starts beating the irons, blocking our way with his fist. Beating it until his paws bleed. The smoke is at our shoulders now. I love you, Nikolai Kroll. I said. The badger crouches and jumps, bashing his skull into the iron. Stop! He leaves a massive dent in the bar. I'm getting you! The second leaves the bar curved and his forehead bloody. Out! I can't stop him. It pops off with a third hit. He grabs me by the waist and pushes me up onto the stone staircase, hacking and coughing, and then slumps. The smoke isn't as bad at this level yet. Nik got me out, away from the others, just like he promised. But he isn't moving. He isn't even breathing. Above me, I see another terrible flash of white. A pillar of fire is coming for me and for Nik. I'm grateful that at least Nik won't feel it. I reach through the grating of the stairs and hold onto his paws, just to squeeze them one last time. Then I close my eyes and wait. But something's wrong. I look around me. I'm in the dark. The air is cool and wet, and I hear the gentle thrumming. It's that terrible hollow earth sound. But right now, for some reason, it puts me at ease. It's my only reminder that right now, somehow my blood still runs through me. I look about me as I let my eyes adjust. But I see nothing in this place. And nothing but an endless expanse with rays of light that bounce almost gracefully off of materials that I ain't ever seen the likeness of before, them being more liquid than rock, both solid and wet, and formless and smooth. But a voice speaks, and anything capable of glimmering in the room gives light like molten gold running through the liquid marble. Life is not constant. A voice reaches out to me. Death is not constant. A happy voice. You yourself are not constant. A content voice. A voice that I have heard before. But something has changed about it since the last time that I heard it. It no longer sounds crackled or dry. It sounds rich and playful. Almost comforting. Be not afraid. For this time, in solitude you are saved. I wait in silence, almost eager for my next message. Because I am so happy that we are still here. That time continues for us like a clock not yet broken. Though I do not know who us is. all I can feel is that my dread wanes. Now remember. And a voice comes back to me, pouring down in my ear like some secret music composed for the architecture of my body alone, thrumming through the chambers of my heart and plucking at the string of every nerve. There is only one constant in all of creation. The warmth, the light, the safety. It is overwhelming to me. And that is a meal. The light in the chamber goes out. As soon as they had come, those lovely, bubbly, calming thoughts leave me. The sense of peace is gone. The sense of awe rushes from my veins as though every last one of them had been sliced open. I wake up beneath the quivering carapace of that monster spider. I think surely that if the flames haven't killed me, that this will be it. But it does not kill me. It drags me by the wrist up those winding stairs, away from the burnt body of Nikolai Kroll, whose arms I leave out of reach. It takes me through the parts of the earth inaccessible to those who can't climb walls. Scuttling, slithering, pushing me out of the hole in the ground in the middle of the desert. It is rejecting me, but only me, as if I were scraps, as if to diminish Nik's sacrifice, as if to say that he wasn't why I had gotten out after all. But that doesn't matter to me. It was he who got me out of that hell, because he promised me that he would. And it's because of him that I can see in the distance that the Hendrix Manor burns, shining like the world's brightest torch. The explosion that we heard below had been a house fire. Nik put together that this was what had set the mine ablaze, because Yao hadn't been lying about the gases. Yao's map was trustworthy, and Nik had trusted him. Was that why I wasn't enough for him? He wanted to save us all. Instead, he lost us. He should have been more selfish. I should have been more selfish. For a moment, I really want to believe in their dream. But why die for a better world if none of us could make it there? I sit on the metal grating, struggling to move out of the smoke when everything that I've lost catches up to me. How could I have been so stupid to try and run away when the person that I really wanted was here the whole time? I think about William, who protected us until the very end, until a single bullet twisted him into something lifeless and empty. I think about Nik, my best friend, the greatest love that I've ever known, dead with his associates miles beneath the ground, only because he gave more and more of himself until there was nothing left. And how the people who made him happy are all dead. At the very least, I think about how that house, and this mine, and this city will be consumed with them in this inferno. But was it worth this? Their suffering? Their unraveling? Their undoing? I don't know. I look again at the metal grating that I sit on top of. There, I see the hands of more men. Men who had died in different parts of the mines, who had tried to get out, who were sticking their hands through the bars, searching for a latch or a weak spot in the dirt, just like the men lost at the bottom, who had all suffocated from the smoke. And I start sobbing. Again, I don't know. But there is one thing that I know for sure, beneath the red sky as my lungs fill with toxic smoke. It feels like it's my turn to die too. But it doesn't come to me. Oh God, why doesn't it come to me? As I hobble towards the hip, I find that the Hendrix Manor isn't the only thing caught up in this inferno. The town hall and most of the downtown has been caught in the flames too. The girls and the madam are nowhere to be found, nor the mayor, nor James or his wife. But I remain, much longer after the fire goes out, much longer after the people here rebuild a town that is a shadow of the young city it once was. And I try to forget them all, because now there is nobody to love, nobody to hate, nobody to talk to or think about at all. Just an empty place where empty things happen, where the people who know what happened pretend that they don't, and they survive as lesser versions of themselves. Every day, I just experience the one constant of creation, that there is a meal. Amen. Well, there you go. That was Nikolai's bad route. As you can see, there is still the Echo Project logo. Um, Actually, something that you didn't see at the very, very beginning of the video is the new studio logo that belongs to George, I guess, and his group that are now taking over the smoke room. But yeah, so you'll probably see that in the next video if I can get it to record that portion. It usually never records the very beginning. But yeah. So anyways, as I said, this was Nikolai's bad route. And in order to get this, you end up having to do a lot of um actually no, I think the only thing you need to do is pick anyone but Nik as the person who is that you're naming to Beckett Moore's brother. I forgot his name. The little the the lizard that works um at the mayor's office. But yeah, so that's how you get this ending. You literally have to name anyone but Nik. In order to get the good ending, though, you have to name Nik, which seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? There is also another option, something else that you can change. Although, I mean, this is still the bad ending, but still. If you were to the part where you're talking to Beckett after you're eavesdropping on one of the bosses, and he like sort of has a visceral reaction, you can ask him what happened or what he saw, or you could just, drop it. If you drop it at the portion where you're speaking with Beckett with Nik inside the mine, when you're trying to get, to safety, you can actually bring up what happened, and Beckett will actually open the door and then, talk to you, and then eventually towards the end of the conversation, Nik will actually I knock out Beckett, I think, and then take the gun from him. So you technically have two guns, but how that is supposed to save you, no one knows. So, Um, but yeah, so everyone dies. Or at the very least, all the miners that were part of the Union die. Dimitri presumably is killed when the cavalry, I guess you could call them, go into the mines and start killing people. Felipe dies when he decides that he wants to surrender. And uh, the Wolverine also dies by basically being cooked alive along with the rest of them. So if the smoke didn't get him, the fire will, I guess. And of course, Samuel is the only one that survived because he was, I guess you could say, rejected by whatever it is that resides inside of the mines and within Echo. And I mean, considering that this is a fan story now, it is no longer part of the whole Echo Project thing. Um, I guess originally my whole original thing that I thought it was gonna be was that this, I guess, ending would eventually lead into the original Echo story because um in here Samuel is left all alone without anyone else. Like literally that maybe if somebody survived, they're not coming back to Echo. Like as far as they're concerned, everyone else died too. So no one's left. Um but now that the story is considered a fan story, technically that theory could still um it still works, but I guess at the same time it doesn't. Um, there is another, and like there's another fan story too coming out soon called Circles. Um, Not to be confused with a story by K9, the comic that I made Cryptid read and made him cry. But yeah, um, I'm curious to see how now that the smoke room is no longer connected to Echo and Echo Project, if George will do something more with the other stories with Murdoch's, Williams, and Cliff's. Now that it is basically a fan project, now that there is no restraint in what he can do, I guess. But yeah. Also, again, me reading this does not condone what he did, especially when he badmouthed some people and some other stuff. Like, yeah, there's drama and there's a whole bunch of other stuff like that. It's like, oh, you're reading it, so you don't care about that. Like, yeah, I do care about it, especially because it did involve a friend of mine, and it involved a story that I actually like, and there was a whole lot of stuff that even some people don't know about, and some other stuff that's, I guess, ongoing, and a whole bunch of stuff, I guess. Um, but again, I'm reading this because the channel members voted on it. You're saying, well, I didn't vote on it. Well, you're probably not a channel member because you're not subscribed as a channel member. There's a difference between channel members and channel subscribers. The channel members are the ones that are actively, um, eh, they're the ones that are giving me money, I guess you could say. But anyway, so this was the bad ending, and next up we'll be reading the good ending, so we can see how things hopefully turn out for the better for them. Anywho, so yeah. I guess thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play the Smoke Room yourself, you can do so by going down into the link in the description, which should have the new link where you can download the Smoke Room and any subsequent update. There is, of course, like I said, a new studio for it called the Goodnight Fellowship, which I'm not sure if they have any form of support yet, but if they do, I suppose I will be linking that down. And I guess it will get you early access to the builds of the Smoke Room. I do know that they will be working on another story as well. I'm not sure if they're going to be doing it anytime soon. It looked interesting, I guess. I'm not really sure what it was about, but I think it was like more horror oriented, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea because you all like romance and stuff like that, and you like, come on, give horror a try at least a little bit. It doesn't have to be their stuff. It could be some other stuff. But anyways, yeah. All my links down in the description as well. My Ko-fi, the channel member thing. In case you want to become a channel member, there will be exclusive stuff there eventually. I do plan to do something with relation to one of the visual novels that I was already reading, that has routes, and that I decided to just focus on one of the routes. If you're smart, you'll be able to figure out which one I'm talking about, and that's only for channel members. What else? What else? Yeah, Throne. I guess that's the only thing left. But yeah, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.